Revelations 8. Revelations 8. We covered 7 last week, and what it is basically was the great revival that is going to take place during the 7th year. Now we are coming to the end. Now we are at the actual end of the 7-year tribulation. We are actually at the last part of the 7-year tribulation, because you're going to find out, not now, but in the Bible. A lot of people think that we are going to go through the tribulation. I do not think so. So we are now in chapter 8. Up until this point, God has offered salvation and is offering salvation. And you have to remember, back in Revelations chapter 6, Revelations chapter 6, verse 9. These are the people that are under the altar that John says, and it says, and when he had opened the 5th seal, I saw under the altar the souls of them that were slain. Now this is an altar of prayer, okay? You have to keep that in mind. This is the prayer, the altar of incense, or it's also called the golden altar, that is found actually in Leviticus. It's found in Exodus. It's found in Numbers. Several places that you find this altar. In Leviticus, I believe it's in Leviticus chapter 16. Let me look really quick. I believe it's in Leviticus chapter 16. I think it is. No, it's not Leviticus chapter 16. I cannot remember right now where it's at. But what you have a brazen altar, and then you have an altar of incense. The brazen altar was on the outside of the temple, the tabernacle of Moses. This is where you would offer up the burnt sacrifices. But under the brazen altar is where you would take coals of fire to make the fire in order to burn the sacrifice. So make sure to keep the brazen altar and the altar of incense in mind. Now, in Revelation chapter 6, you actually see the people that are under this altar. What altar are these people under, which is symbolic of this? Now, the altar that these people are under is going to be this altar right here, the altar of incense, or the golden altar. Let me look back at that. I think that's got to be in Leviticus chapter 16. Yes, I know I'm stupid. We're not that stupid. Leviticus chapter 16, verse 12. Now, you will see this in Leviticus chapter 16, verse 12, for the use of that altar, and then you will see in the Old Testament, but in the New Testament, you see the use of this altar actually in Luke chapter 1. You remember the father of John the Baptist was serving in the tabernacle or the temple when the angel Gabriel came to him and was telling him about he was going to have a son named John that was going to be born. So you actually see these taking place in the Old Testament, which is in Leviticus 16, and then in the New Testament, which is Luke chapter 1. Let's look in Leviticus chapter 16, verse 12. Leviticus 16, verse 12. It's in verse 12 and 13. And this is going to be the order that this is going to be taking place. Now remember that this altar is right before you get into the Holies of Holies. This altar, which is the altar of incense, is in the holy place. You had the holy place and you had the Holies of Holies. The holy place had the table of showbread, the golden candlestick, and the altar of incense, or it's also known as the golden altar. So this is right before you would enter into the Holies of Holies. There was that curtain or that veil that separated. This is what you would have to walk past. Okay, it's that kind of catty corner, or as the older people say, Anna Godlin, from the curtain. So you wouldn't have to walk around; you could just walk past it. Okay. Now this is what what God is going to tell Aaron, and this is the Day of Atonement. This is what would happen. And he shall take a censer full of burning coals from off of the altar, which is this altar right here. Okay? And what they would do is they would take these tongs, and they would put them You've seen the Catholics, they would have this thing they swing back and forth, it's got that smoke coming out. That's what he's talking about. He would have one of these, and he would take burning coals, and he would put it inside of this censer. Okay, and the burning coals had to come from this altar. You remember the sons of Aaron actually took coals from off somewhere else and put it in that censer, and God struck them dead because they brought forth strange fire. So you have to take the coals from this altar, you put them in that censer, and then you would make your way from outside to inside into the holy place, and you would get to the altar of incense or the golden altar. And what would happen, it says, and he shall put the incense upon the fire, which is this altar right here. Okay? The incense upon the fire before the Lord, that the cloud of incense may cover the mercy seat, which is upon the testimony that he did not. What would happen is it would go under the curtain into the holies of holies, and then it would raise up. The only time you can go into the holies of holies is on the Day of Atonement. Now, the high priest or the priest would do this twice a day. They would do it in the morning, they'd do it in the afternoon. And when they would do this, people, that was the Hebrews, would stand outside of the tabernacle of Moses, and they would wait until he came back out. And then that afternoon, he would go back in. The number of priests, the Levitical priests that you had was several thousand. So you might get to do this. You would definitely get to do it maybe once in your lifetime, but never twice. So when what they would do is they would draw lots. Say us three was priest, I'd go first. My name was scratched out then. I couldn't go again. And they would draw lots off these two, but there were so many thousands of these Levitical priests. You may get to do this when you're 80. You may have to wait an entire life even to do this. So he would go and he would get these coals that was hot, and he would put them in that incense, and he would put them on top of this altar of incense, and this is your prayer altar. And the smoke that rose up off this altar was symbolic of the prayers that was going up for the sins of the people from Israel. And that is found in Leviticus chapter 16. Now, if you go to Luke, Luke chapter 1, Zacharias is doing this job now. He's the father of John the Baptist. And let's look at verse 8. And it came to pass that while he executed the priest office before God in the order of his course. You remember he had 24 courses of priest, okay, which is found actually in Deuteronomy. Okay? And when your time would come, you would draw your name out. All right, it's time for you to get to work, go do this. You would do it that morning or afternoon. You may not ever get to do it again. So this was a really big deal for this day. It's like hitting a lottery. It was rare you're going to do it, but if you go, you're center of attention. So he goes in, and it says, according to the custom of the priest office, his lot was to burn incense. What he is going to do, now this is not taking place, but this is taking place in the morning. He would take the altar of it, he would go to this altar, take the hot coal, and he would bring it to this altar, offering up prayers. This is still in the dispensation of the law. This is according to the law. This is before Christ comes. So we're not in the dispensation of grace in Luke chapter 1. According to the custom, verse 9, of the priest's office, and his lot was to burn incense when he went into the temple of the Lord. And the whole multitude of the people were praying without at the time of incense. Millions of people, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people outside praying, don't die, don't die, don't die. And then you know the rest of the story. I want you to look in verse 13. Okay? But the angel said unto him, fear not. This is the very first words that we hear after 400 and some odd years, that black area or the dark area between the Old Testament and New Testament, we do not hear a thought from God or a word from God. The very first words we hear is fear not. So, or from a representative of God. And the angel said unto him, fear not. It says, for thy prayer is heard. For thy wife Elizabeth, which is shall bear, she's going to bring up a son named John. Now I want you to go down to verse 19. Who is this angel? And the angel answered and said unto him, I am Gabriel. Now remember what this says, that stand in the presence of God. Okay? Now, you have different types of angels that do different types of things. They're ranked in order. Okay? Gabriel is an angel that is standing in the presence of God. You have to keep that in mind when you go back to Revelation chapter 8. So what is happening now in Luke, he's going to the brazen, and then he is going to the altar of incense. Now, the souls that we see in Revelation chapter 6, let's go back there. I'm trying to go slower. In Revelation chapter 6, in verse 9, they are not under this altar, they are under the altar of incense, the altar of prayers. And what a prayer is a request to God, right? When you're praying, you're making acknowledgments to God, you're requesting something. Okay? That's why we say, do you have any prayer request? So they are under this altar, and they are making their request known to who? God. Okay? It says, because when he had opened the fifth seal, I saw into the altar the souls. And this is their prayer. Alright? How long, O Lord, holy and true? They are not praying for salvation, for health, wealth, prosperity. This is what they're praying for. How long, O Lord, holy and true, doest thou judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell upon the earth? That is their prayer. We want to be avenged. Our blood wants to be avenged. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. He is the only one that can bring vengeance. So they are asking God under the altar of incense, or the golden altar, because you must remember, where did Jesus Christ enter when he ascended into heaven? The Holy of Holies, the great Holy of Holies, which is heaven. And he entered and he placed his blood upon the mercy seat, upon the Ark of the Covenant. But before you get to the Ark of the Covenant, you've got to go through this area. Okay? So now, we have this gigantic holy place where God is going to be at this instance, and there are souls that are under this altar, and they have a prayer request, and it is, we want vengeance. Now, up until this point, people are being saved. It's very evident in chapter 7. Millions get saved. These 144,000 John the Baptist are going to go out and save people, preach the gospel. Okay? Now, if you go in verse 8, and when he had opened, in chapter 8, now remember, we start with seals, we now have trumpets, and we're going to go to bowls. In the trumpets, in the seals, the seventh seal issues in 7 trumpets. The 7th trumpet issues in 7 bowls. Okay? And when you're dealing with the trumpets and you're dealing with the bowls, the previous is what causes the one after it to happen. The one that happens next is going to be feeding off the previous one. Okay? So it's not going to be something that's just totally out of nature. It's going to be random. Okay? Now, up until this time, we have salvation. Okay? You can call it the dispensation of grace. Some people call it the dispensation of tribulation. Okay? But people's going to be saved, but it is not. They say it is not a salvation of coming freely to Christ. It is a salvation of being martyred. Because you remember they asked him later on in the book of Revelations, how did they get here? So when they gave their life to Christ, they got their heads cut off. Okay? When he came, now you have to remember, up until this time, salvation. Now, after this, there's none. And I can prove that because it says, verse 21 of chapter 9, before we go any further, and they repented not of their murders, nor of worship, nor of the sorceries, nor of their fornication, nor of their thefts. There is no repentance. They do not repent. Go to, let me find it really quick. Go to Revelation 15. Verse 9. I'm sorry, 16, verse 9. When I was teaching this at Lathamville, there was a girl that was listening to this, and she said, this is not fair. What you're reading right there, it is just, she goes, you're telling me that after chapter 8 there's no hope. I said, there's none. And she said, that's not really fair. I said, what's fair about it? I mean, what's not fair about it? You're living now in grace where you come free to Christ. You know, in my opinion, the angels looking at Jesus going, that's not fair. Why are you giving him a chance? They don't love you. So now, if you go to Revelation chapter 16, I want you to look what happens. Now, you're dealing in Revelation chapter 16 with bowls or vials that pours out. This is what happens in Revelation chapter 16, verse 9. And men were scorched with great heat, and they blasphemed the name of God, which had power over these plagues, and they repented not to give him glory. Go to verse 10. And the fifth angel poured out his vial into the seat of the beast, and his kingdom was full of darkness, and they gnawed their tongues for pain and blasphemed God because of their pain and their sores. And they did what? Repented not. No salvation now. It's gone. There is a one small window of opportunity. Do you remember in Matthew? I'll go. These are my bookmarks. I'm using napkins now. That's pitiful. So, in Matthew chapter 7, there is a small window. Matthew chapter 7:13, it says, "Enter into the straight gate." That's small, P9. Okay, for wide and broad is the way which leadeth to destruction, and many's going to be on that one. In verse 14, it says, "Because straight is the gate, small." Okay, if you look in verse 8. Verse 1 of chapter 8, it says, "And when he had opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for a space of 30 minutes. It's not a long time, is it? Small. One last chance. Just one small sliver of chance, still for hope. 30 minutes. And when you look at a span of an hour, a half an hour, that is our timetable. Okay? Because who is writing this? God or John? John. So he knows time. Okay? He is dealing with it. Jews don't have a different clock than we do. A second's a second in here or in Africa. Okay? So you're dealing with 30 minutes. Okay? One last hope. About the length of a good sermon. 30 minutes. And then after this, everything falls apart. In chapter 7, you have peace during this time of tribulation. Now in chapter 8, God in His mercy and His grace is going to give men one more chance. Okay? And it says, when He had opened up the seventh seal, last invitation, okay, there was silence in heaven for about the space of a half hour. Okay? And then after that 30 minutes, the clock, the bell rings, time's up, alarm's set, and I saw the 7 angels which stood before God. And to them were given 7 trumpets. 7 trumpets. And another angel, one, came and stood at the altar. If you go back to Luke chapter 1, my allergy's about to kill me. In Luke chapter 1, Zacharias is offering up some incense right by the altar. Who is standing by the altar talking to him in Luke chapter 1? It's in verse 19. Gabriel. And what does Gabriel describe as? I'm the one that stands in the presence of God. If you go back to Revelation chapter 8, where is this angel standing at in verse 3? So who is this angel? Gabriel. Okay? And it says, and another angel came and he stood by the altar having a golden censer. Leviticus 16, Luke chapter 1. Okay? Now, you have to remember that John is describing sights and sounds and actions the only way he knows how to describe them. Okay? That'd be like driving a car by George Washington one day and you say, what is that? It's like a metal horse or something. I don't know what it is. So he's just describing things in his best verbiage or best language, okay? And I saw another angel came and he stood at the altar having a golden censer, and it was given unto him. And it was given unto him much. That's more than what is needed, okay? When you would take this censer, it wasn't real big. It's only like a handful of coals that you would put in there. Now, if you take these hot coals here, what are you expecting God to hear from this altar? Your prayers. Okay? What are the people praying in Revelation chapter 6, verse 9 and 10? We want vengeance. what is God finally going to answer their prayer and give them what? Vengeance. Okay? Now, saw 7 angels which stood before God and had 7 trumpets. An angel come, has an out. And that thing that is very interesting, he gets much incense, much more than what is actually needed. So God's wrath is not only coming, but it's coming in a double portion, much more than what is really needed. But he's going to make sure people on earth are going to be punished. Okay? Now, that he should offer it with the prayers of all saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne. And we go back to Revelation 6. So their prayers are finally going to be answered. Okay? And the smoke of the incense which came with the prayers of the saints ascended up before God out of the angel's hands. Now, and the angel took the censer and filled it with fire from the altar. He takes his censer, goes to this altar, okay? But there's no need in going to this altar where the prayers are at, because the prayers are already ascended up. Okay? Now, this is not a literal what is happening. He does not, the angel is not going to take a censer and throw it down. He is describing what he is seeing in the best verbiage possible, because I want you to watch. He takes that censer. The prayers are going to be answered. Don't get me wrong on that. Yes, they are going to be answered. Of all the saints upon the golden altar, and the smoke rose up, and this is what he does in verse 5. Look. Takes the censer, fills it with fire of the altar, and he cast it not on the earth, but where? Into it. Okay? Into the earth. And there were voices and thunderings and lightnings and earthquakes. Now, that is God's judgments rising up. Do you remember, I think it's in Exodus, when God tells Moses, I'm going to come down on the mountain, but you make sure you put barriers up so the children of Israel can't come near. And when God ascended off that mountain, he ascended, and it was through smoke and fire and thunders and lightnings. So you see this is, and that was God announcing, I'm here. So what is happening now, in verse 5, God is basically announcing, I'm here. My judgments are now here. My grace is gone. Time's up. And the 7 angels, which had 7 trumpets, prepared themselves to sound. Now, what has just happened is he has seen something come down from heaven and enter not on the earth, but into the earth. Keep that in mind. And the angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood. All right. Where does the source of a volcano's eruption come from? Where's the core at? Inside the earth. Do you see what he is seeing now? It is a gigantic volcanic eruption. Because I want you to look at what he is describing. What comes up from a volcano? Lava, rocks, and what color is it? Red. Okay? First angel sounded, there followed hail and fire mingled with blood. Okay? So he is actually, there's 2 schools of thought here, okay? You can go with either one if you can come up with one on your own. He is seeing not only a volcanic eruption that is taking place, because you have to remember, do you remember in the very first seals that are taking place, how the whole earth is basically just kind of falling apart? And in verse 12 of chapter 6, we have this gigantic great earthquake, and the moon and the stars and all that start falling out, and the whole universe is starting to collapse. And he says the sky looks like somebody's taking a scroll, ripped it apart, and it keeps ripping. So you have the whole atmosphere, you have the whole universe of sky, everything is just kind of crumbling in. Okay? Because if the center doesn't hold, everything falls apart. So basically the center is not holding, and the whole sky and everything is just falling in. But you do have a space of silence for 30 minutes, and then everything erupts again. Now, you have to remember everything is falling in. The earth has just gotten over what has happened in Revelation chapter 6, because now you have some silence for a little bit. Now everything else falls apart again. And it says, hail and fire mingle with blood. they often think that not only is it hellfire mingled with blood, because it does not say looks like blood, it says mingled with blood. What is the only thing on earth that has blood? People and animals. Okay? So you can either go with that school, you can go with those two schools of thought. And they were cast upon the earth. Now this is absolutely amazing. Imagine they had Earth Day in Central Park last year, and I was watching on Fox News. I think over 250,000 people showed up for Earth Day. Now I like the earth, don't get me wrong, but I'm not a tree hugger or a spotted owl kiss or anything like that. Okay, I'll stomp on a cockroach quicker than anybody. But there are people. People worship the earth. They really do. People worship. They love the earth. They love trees. They worship it. What is happening now? All the tree huggers. I can imagine what's going through their minds. Because look what happens. Third part of the trees. This is not in Alabama. A third part of the trees on this is gone. Third part. Now, what does trees put off? Oxygen. Oxygen. What's going to happen to the oxygen around here?
Depleted.
It's going to be depleted. 1/3 of the trees. What do we put off?
Carbon monoxide.
What kills the carbon? What takes in the carbon monoxide?
Plants, trees.
Trees. So what's going to happen? You're basically going to be living in a gas chamber. They're gone. Third part of the trees, just like that. Okay? That really doesn't mean a lot to, if you read it, you know, wow. But do you remember when the tornadoes come through a few years ago and all the trees was gone? They were still laying on the ground, wasn't they? These are going to be burned up. It's going to be like a moonscape. Nothing out there. The world, a third part of the world is going to be gone, scorched up. A third part of the trees are burned up. And all green grass. Every bit of it. You'll be living in a desert. So, no power, no electricity. Hospitals are done. No doctors, everything's done. You're still trying to clean up for all the hundreds of thousands of airplanes that just fell out of the sky. All the millions and millions and millions and millions of car wrecks that's happened. You're still trying to clean up from all of the meteors that's just hit. And then this happens. There's no trees. What lives in trees? Animals. What's going to happen with the animals? Remember, there's an old movie I watched the other night, so corny, came out in the 70s, called Day of the Animals. Animals turn on people. It's going to happen. So you're living in a gas chamber. We're putting off all this carbon monoxide, and the trees ain't there to bring it in and give off oxygen. So, and then it says, a third part of the trees and every bit of the grass is going to be gone. Cattle eat grass. We eat cattle. Can you imagine what is happening now? That's one. Got 6 more to go. And the second angel sounded. It's almost like when he's writing this, there is no emotion in his voice or in his writing. Second angel does this, third angel does this. You don't hear any sadness in it, do you? It's just, this is what's going to happen. And these are the prayers. And you want to know what the prayers are? These people are praying in Revelation chapter 6. This is their prayer. This is what they want to happen to the people that's still living on this earth. And the second angel sounded. And as it were, a great mountain, as it were. If you look that up in the Greek, it says resembles. It's not a mountain. It looks like a mountain. Alright. A great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea. Tell me what you think that is.
An island?
We watched it the other night. Me and Chris, one of Crystal's favorite movies. There's something hurtling towards the earth, very fast. It's a meteor. But he says it looks like a mountain. Not just a regular mountain. A great mountain. It's like you pull up Mount St. Helens out of the thing and just toss it. And it's on fire. Do you know what has now got holes in it above us? The ozone. Do you know what's keeping a lot of this stuff from hitting us? The ozone. Do you know what's gone now in Revelation chapter 8? The ozone. It's letting everything fall. He says, I looked up and I seen this thing that looked like a mountain, and it was on fire, and it was cast into the sea. Into the sea. So you have this. So now this is not the first meteors we've had, but this is the greatest one, according to, remember, Revelation chapter. So I don't know where it falls, but it falls somewhere, wherever this blue's at. Say Pacific Ocean. Okay? All of these oceans are connected some way. They're all connected in one way of another. So when he says Great Sea, he is talking all of this. But if he says great, I want you to look again. Part of the sea became blood. Now, according to John, the only sea that they knew was the Great Sea, which is called the Mediterranean. But the Mediterranean is also connected. You have a little space of a gap that runs and it goes into the Atlantic Ocean. So if he's talking about the Mediterranean, that is the only sea they need. It was actually called the Great Sea in the New Testament. Eventually it's going to come out. Okay? And it's the Atlantic, and it's Pacific, Indian, China, Sea of Japan, all of that. So really we only have one body of water in actuality. Just different names in different parts. So now there's no trees, there's no grass, it's gone. There's no fire trucks to put out that fire, no volunteer fire departments. And then he says, I seen a great mountain coming, it was thrown into the sea. A third part of the sea became blood. That's not the Gulf of Mexico. That's every bit of seawater in the world. A third part of it. I want you to look. And it says a third part of the sea became blood. And the third part of the creatures that were in the sea and had life, they died. I was reading a few years ago, and I don't know why the government done this. They wanted to put a bunch of money and hire a bunch of marine biologists to find out how much sea life was in the ocean. They wanted a ballpark figure. How much sea life's in the ocean. We want to know how many, They done 5 years study, a couple of $250 billion. You know what their answer was? We don't know. That was their answer. We have no idea. They said you could study this for 1,000 years and you'll never know how much is in there. So, it is not the sea that is the big concern, because we can live without the sea. We don't drink ocean water. And we can live without the sea creatures, right? But something happens. A third part of the ships are destroyed. It's military. Are gone. How does that happen? Tsunami. So you've got the sea creatures, sea life, and our military is kaput. No more military. Chris and I, we got going to the beach, and we were standing out there one time, and I told her, I was like, could you imagine just looking out of the Gulf of Mexico, and it's just, as far as you can see, just dead sea life. You could probably walk across it. The stink. I mean, and that's California, Texas, everywhere. The amazing thing about this is that every continent is affected by the ocean in some way. So you've got all this blood and all these sea creatures. They're bloated. There's fire. It's raining. I don't think, and the reason I don't think you could ever make a movie like this and put it on TV is because you could never be really that graphic of what is actually going to happen. And a third part of our military is gone. When you go to Fort Morgan, you can stand on the beach and you can count the oil rigs out there. I think we counted 12 or 13. And that's in just a little space. Oil rigs are gone. Natural gas rigs are gone. All of our military is gone. Tsunamis happen. It's total devastation. And this is and God is answering the prayers of these people. I'll keep going a little bit. And the third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died, and the third part of the ships were destroyed. And the third angel sounded. And there fell a great star from heaven, burning as a lamp. What is that? Another meteor. I mean, basically, God has opened up the galaxies and just said, let fall what may on earth. Okay? Third angel sounded, fell a great star from heaven, burning as if it was a lamp, and it fell on the third part of the rivers and on the fountains of the water. Okay? Rivers and water. Now, we can live without seawater, right? Don't drink it. We can live without sea creatures, right? Stink, we can live without it. Can't live without trees. Now, in this part, you're already living in a gas chamber. Can't breathe. Everybody that's got vacation homes on the beach, bankrupt, can't do nothing with them. But you cannot live without fresh water. How long can you go without it, Crystal? Do you know? 7 days? 10 days without fresh water?
No, that's food.
Food.
3 days without water.
3 days without water? I don't know. I can't go a lot. I can't go 30 minutes. I'll die, dude. So you got a third part of the rivers, and upon the fountains of the water, the earth. Skirm Creek, Gunnersville River, Tennessee River. And the name of this star is called wormwood. It's the only time you'll find that in the New Testament. Old Testament, several places. It actually in the Hebrew means poison. We don't know what kind of poison it is, but it's basically in Hebrew means undrinkable also. So something falls and contaminates our water. And the third part of the waters, a third part, is going to become wormwood, and many men died from the waters because they were made bitter. It's amazing what's happening, isn't it? How God, you take away, we can live without our iPhones, our cell phones, and electricity, we can. But you take away our water, our fresh water, we're done. You say, well, I can drink Cokes and all that. What's in a Coke? You gotta have H2O. It's necessary to have it. You cannot live without it. I guarantee at this point right now, in Revelation chapter 8, I'm going to quit. A bottle of water like they've got right there, probably sell for $100,000. Because there's none on earth. Every time we go to Costco, they've got, they just got a mountain of it's any type of water you want. If they're still around, them places are going to be overrun with people. People's going to be selling their kids for a bottle of water. They're going to be doing god-awful things for water. I mean, water is going to be like a drug. People's got to have it. Dear Heavenly Father, we love you and we thank you. Dear God, as we study this, remove our fear. Remove our anxiety, dear God. But help us to remember that we have family and we have friends who are going to be affected by this. Help us, dear God, to keep this in mind. And our ultimate goal on this earth and in this life is to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. Thank you for the praise reports and thank you for the prayer requests. Love you and thank you.